Welcome back to SAUG TV. I hope you're enjoying your coffee. We're actually over here near the meeting pods, and my guest today, this morning, is Tim Ebbeck, who of course is President and CEO of SAP in Australia, in this region. And we're actually now going to do a quick catch-up after this morning's keynote and talk about some of the themes that have come out of that. Firstly, thanks for joining me, Tim.
Pleasure.
One of the great things about this morning was that we had an iPad rather, demo that actually worked. I mean, isn't that exciting? What are some of the things that you're looking forward to as the show unfolds?
Look, I think these conferences are actually always very important for us because they at the end of the day, the user group is our customer base, and generally the people that attend the user group are truly the evangelists of SAP inside their companies. So it's very important for us to connect with them, for them to connect with each other. I think Graham's opening, where he spoke of the networking opportunities, that's very important. The sharing of experiences. Hopefully not the opportunities to gang up on SAP, but to partner with us in the true sense of partnering. And we always really look forward to these as ways of talking about the future as well.
What's the reality of how you work with the user group, since we're talking about that? Because I imagine they're sort of part friends and part lobby group. They've obviously got an interest. So how do you balance the relationship there?
I don't think the lobby group function is actually so much an issue for us, because I think we do have a very strong relationship with our user groups around the world. So it's not the SUGIN umbrella organisation globally, and the SAP Australia user group, which represents SAP customers in Australia at the global level, work very constructively with SAP. I think Graham mentioned in his keynote this morning the issue of enterprise support when we launched it, and perhaps the timing of that was poor given the GFC. I don't think too many economists predicted the GFC the way it was, so I guess our timing was bad. But I think there was a wonderful dialogue between SAP and its customers on a global and local level, and SAP customers in Australia, represented through SAUG, really took a leadership position in ensuring that the users of SAP down here were part of the program to actually assess enterprise support, demonstrate the value that it was being driven by enterprise support, and also reflect to SAP that timing could have been better and there was that mid-step required.
Now, just to talk about the SAP strategy for a moment, interesting thing that I've observed from a 35,000 foot perspective, this is a company that used to take pride in organic growth, and yet here we have, in the last couple of years, you've acquired Sybase and Business Objects, two massive acquisitions. What does that say about how you're thinking about growth in the future?
Look, I think it says that SAP has expanded its strategy. What we will not do is acquire companies for their customer base. What we won't do is acquire companies to merely expand our market share. That's not what we're about. Our experience in life has been that SAP invented the enterprise approach to things. It invented ERP effectively. So we don't need to bring in technology there because it is very hard to integrate it. Where we are bringing in technology is in areas like analytics. Business Objects was the market leader. There is no question that SAP needed to access the data from the transaction engine that is SAP in a more effective way. Yeah. And we've taken Business Objects leadership position and made that now SAP leadership position. Yeah. Sybase brings another dimension to us, and I think the demonstration this morning with the iPad is a classic example.
Let's talk about that for a moment in the context of Sybase. So we're actually, in this in-memory discussion, we're talking about lifting the data out of traditional transaction back-end processes into memory. Now, how much of a risk is that in terms of the stability of these memory systems? I presume it's going to be sitting in a blade of some description? Yeah, look,
in-memory as a concept is one that we are very excited about. And we look at it from both an analytics perspective, but also from a disruptive perspective. The first thing you need to understand is that databases are inherently getting larger and larger and larger. And the biggest reason they're getting larger is because there's a lot of reporting structure put into the database. The other thing that's happened is that memory has become a lot cheaper, computing has become a lot more powerful. Therefore, if you actually remove all the reporting structure out of a database, you actually condense the amount of data in there very significantly. What SAP has got and has patented is technology now that enables the reduction in the size of the database. It compresses the database very significantly, to the extent that we've got a global consumer goods company that we've been working with over the last couple of years. They've taken their last 3 years worth of complete transactional history, which was many terabytes of data, and we've compressed that into in-memory capability. So they're able to actually dig into their live data and get real-time information.
So that's quite interesting. But how will you look at the Sybase portfolio and separate out the interesting stuff? What are you going to leave behind in that context?
Well, the first thing is we're going to run Sybase as a separate company. So the first thing we do recognise is that mobility is something that is not a core skill of SAP, and I think our board has announced that we're not going to try to bring Sybase in, cut the cost out of the place, and just try to exercise synergies that way. We believe that Sybase, as a partner of SAP, notwithstanding the joint ownership, is the most effective solution. Our approach has always been about partnering. We will continue to work, as we've done work in in-memory development, so as Sybase, we're going to work together on that sort of stuff. But from a front-end mobility perspective, we'll keep them separate. Okay.
Now, with business objects, we've seen a really interesting, I think, a renaissance in business intelligence. It used to be we build the data warehouse and they'll come. Of course, they never did. Now we're in a new era. Describe that era for us.
Well, I think there's been a number of things that happened through the GFC, and I describe the global financial crisis as being one where, to imagine you're in an aeroplane and you're flying through a big storm. There's two things you want at that stage. You want your best pilot at the helm, talent.
Yes.
Second thing is you want all the cockpit lights lit up, BI. So I think the renaissance of BI, I'm not sure it actually ever went away, but I think it's now
it's definitely on the agenda though, isn't it? Because
we're
seeing a lot of CIOs saying, I need a better strategy for this.
I think what's actually happening is that the business owners are actually saying, I need a better strategy for it.
Well, maybe that's where the impetus comes from.
That's right, and I think there has been a very significant shift over the last 18 months from IT being a repository of power in organisations to the businesses, the line of business leads coming in and saying, I need intelligence, I need information about my business now. Now, I think that's where mobility comes into play as well.
Okay.
These guys they don't want green screens, they don't want PCs that take a long time to boot up, they don't want teams of people running reports for them. They want the information now in their hands.
So the challenge for SAP has always been one of simplicity. How do you achieve simplicity when what you're dealing with is such a very large, firstly, volume of data, and also the complexity of integration? That's where we've seen a lot of failures. So how do you think we're going to get to, well, more of this iPad simplicity that we saw this morning?
I'd make two comments on that. One, SAP has always been very good at keeping the complex in our core. One of the reasons that we have not been acquiring different companies, as I said before, is it's very hard to integrate. We believe we've got the central piece down pat. So, keeping the complexity in the core is really important. Second thing is, in terms of the presentation of data, it's very hard to make an application look ugly on an iPad. So, the nice thing about these tools is that you can keep the complexity in the core and have the presentation layer very simple, very user-friendly, very intuitive, so the training costs are very low. And when you get into more of the Explorer type technologies, like Tim was showing this morning, where you're actually quizzing, it's almost becoming like the Google of the enterprise, but where you can actually intuitively drill down as things strike you. And it's not that hard to do. You don't need to be a trained analyst to do that.
I think the challenge must be, though, that when you start looking deeper and deeper into integrating this stack, it's still obviously a lot of work for integrators and for partners who are doing this. How do we make sure that the costs don't blow out in that context?
Well, we truly believe that the orchestration of mobile, on-demand, on-premise is fundamental. And that's the piece. You'll always hear SAP talk about this orchestration.
Yeah. Now, what do you mean by that? Because is that a technology simplicity? What's the?
It's about data integrity more than anything else. It's okay to have an on-demand Salesforce automation capability, but if it doesn't actually link back into your on-premise or major database, then really, it's a standalone system. Everything that SAP will talk about, be it on-premise, be it on-demand, or be it on mobile, will be based on the same data integrity platform. That's what we call orchestration.
And are there some other technologies that you can refer to there that are helping achieve that?
I think what you find SAP is actually doing is just leveraging our existing technologies. So when we talk, for example, about on-demand, we speak of two on-demand groupings. One of them is on-demand line of business solutions like CRM for Salesforce automation or marketing. but it's based on the core data set that we have in our on-premise solution. The second one is SAP Business by Design, which is a complete suite. So once again, that suite is end-to-end in an on-demand cloud environment.
Okay. Well, one of the risks, of course, is that when you really go towards that integrated stack, it's a bit like Apple. You know, you're presenting an integrated stack, which ideally should work. But what if bits of it don't start working? How easily are you able to extract modules from the stack?
Well, I think as you would have heard in my presentation, we actually contend that the complexity of the stack is something that is going to start disintegrating over time. You know, for example, why do you need a big complex database with all its tables and format and size and storage requirements and virtualization requirements when ultimately you could actually take it into memory? Yeah. So we're actually about trying to simplify the stack. What we are going to do is not try to do that ourselves. We continue our strategy of working with leading edge partners.
Okay. All right, well, Tim Ebbeck, thanks for joining me today. Tim Ebbeck, the President and CEO of SAP in Australia, has been my guest this morning on Web TV. If you'd like to ask him any questions, he's down over here near the meeting pods. And just as a reminder, if you've been enjoying your coffee and your breakfast this morning, these videos will be, and have been recorded and will be available to you on the SAUG website for viewing at a time of your convenience. So thanks for joining us, and be sure to look up and look at the next videos that we'll have as they continue on later through the day. Thanks very much.